Hello everyone, I am Nikki Clayco with Fulfill Your Legacy. You are on Core40 Experience Week 9. This is pretty exciting.
Niner.
Yeah, who are you?
Who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I am Tim Breen from First Reformed Church, Orange City, Iowa, and I am the married father of 3.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
And a wife of Tammy, who I love.
No, husband of Tammy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's start over.
I think we should leave that in there.
Okay, I'll decide if I want to take it out later. Okay, so this, the ancient story is what we're talking about still. And so let's get into this a little bit. You can describe what's going on here, and there will be time left for me to ask some good questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here we are in the Bible at a time, we move quickly, 1 week to the next, that the people of God waited 40 years for. We're at kind of the pages of Deuteronomy, which are set up as a sermon or maybe sermon series preached by Moses to the people of God as they're looking like this over at the Promised Land on the other side of the Jordan River. And they have been wandering for 4 decades in the wilderness, eating manna and quail and drinking from whatever water sources they could find. They're hot, they're tired. A whole generation of them has been buried because they've died in the desert sands. And finally, they are ready to enter the Promised Land. Moses knows the whole ethos, the whole experience of God is going to change when they go from being wanderers in the desert to being settled people in towns and villages in Canaan, which is this promised land that God had told Abraham about hundreds and hundreds of years before. So Moses says, be careful that when life becomes easier, you don't compromise your commitment to God. And there's going to be lots of people wanting you to do other things. There's lots of gods that are going to be there that are going to try to entice you. And in other places, Joshua, who says, let's just wipe out the people so we don't have this enticement. Spoiler alert, they don't do that. They leave enough people there who become kind of thorns in the flesh, or stumbling blocks is another kind of church term, and trip them up, and they invite them to worship idols, and the people do. Baal and Asherah and Molech and a bunch of these other gods. And so their commitment to the God who led them through the Red Sea, through the desert, begins to fade over time and in the presence of these idols.
Mm-hmm. Heartbreaking, but similar to what we live with today. But So let's talk a little bit about what idolatry looks like today.
Yeah, idolatry is as big of a problem as ever. And you might say, well, I don't have like a Buddha on my mantelpiece that I'm bowing down to. I don't have a carved statue. Where's the idols, Tim? What are you talking about? St. Augustine has this great line. He says, idolatry is worshiping anything we should use and using anything we should worship. Mm-hmm. So what this means for all of us is that we get involved in idolatry anytime we take something earthy and make it something that we worship, or actually vice versa as well. Something wrong is in that when we take the divine and turn it into something very, very commonplace. But idolatry, means taking something that it's good. And that's the thing, that idolatry starts out seemingly so benign or so reasonable. In the case of God's people, they would have just maybe started out by just maybe quickly nodding their head toward one of these Canaanite gods, because they're just kind of covering their bases. In those days, people tended to think not that there was a God everywhere, but that gods were kind of local. So there's a god of the mountains, there's a god of the river, there's a god of the rain, there's a god of the seashore. There's a god in your town and a god in my town. And they would just think, well, I should probably make sure, just in case there are those gods, that I sort of bow down to them. And over time, that little compromise that they make spins itself into full-blown idolatry. And the people forget the God that delivered them. So Moses was very, very right to warn them there in the sermon that he gives in Deuteronomy about what's going to happen. And what idols do is they distort your view of God. They minimize God. And so do we have idols today? Absolutely. Our commitment to our career, or our commitment to money, or our commitment to our kids becoming the best AAU soccer players that they might be, become an idol because they distort other commitments that we've made to God. We say, oh, we can let that slide, or we don't have to give that much money.
A priority.
Absolutely. Our
Over
priorities
God.
morph. Yeah. And then what happens is you find that, and this is an interesting comparison a lot of people have made, modern addictions look a lot like ancient idolatry. And I shared a sermon in my church not too long ago where I talk about how eventually there's people worshiping Baal, and they pray out to Baal. Baal doesn't listen. So they start crying, and Baal doesn't listen. So they start dancing, and Baal doesn't listen. So they start cutting themselves because Baal doesn't listen. They have to go more and more and more because they're getting a diminished return. So in the end, you worship the idol makes you its slave, because the idol was never intended to be this way, for you can do things that only the true God can, and in return, then the idol asks things of you that you can't ever be, and you get a whole big mess of it.
Yeah, I'm going to throw you a curveball here, and we'll just have to cut it out if you don't want this in here.
Batter up.
Okay, so as I was taking my life coaching classes and then tried specializing in spiritual coaching and these things, I recall getting into a spiritual coach program that was, I put it on, I was standing on the treadmill listening, and I had to shut the treadmill off and get off and get it all off, because it just started taking me down this path of worshiping the sun, and one with it was spiritual coaching in a different way. And this is a popular thing right now, and I want to be respectful to people while I'm communicating, but I really want good ways of steering people back to what's really biblical, what's true. And I sometimes think, yeah, you know, God made those crystals, but, or I mean, yeah, you have those crystals, but who made them?
Correct.
And you have those candles, but who made them? You know, and oils and all these things that we can sometimes get so wrapped up in, just that priority and understanding.
Yeah, idolatry, in another really pithy phrase, is exchanging the worship of the Creator for worship of things in creation.
Yeah.
And I love, there's a passage in Isaiah chapter 44, later on in Scripture, where Isaiah kind of makes fun of idol worshipers, because he says, you cut down a tree, you saw it in half of it you chop up to heat your house and bake your bread, and the other half you carve into a statue and say, deliver me, rescue me. It's like, think about what you're actually doing. He says no one pays attention to it. So being thoughtful and not just drifting into those situations, you were wise, get off the treadmill, turn it off. It's a lie. It's not real. We are exchanging something good for something ultimate. We're turning something that's important and beautiful into something that we ask to deliver us from something that only Jesus Christ can deliver us from. That's idolatry.
All right. Well, we have a really tough subject, I think. We're all tempted all the time with these things, and we can lose our priorities in this world that you kind of talked about, how as the world got better, you have more things at your reach, it's even harder, and we're there. So let's be wise.
Yeah, we definitely live in an age more like being in Canaan now than being in the wilderness. And sometimes it's easier for us to follow God when we haven't got anything else. And I think of some of our grandparents, great-grandparents who lived through the Depression, lived through wars. They were forced to trust in God. You and I, we live in a time of abundance and a time of peace. And so that call to faith is sometimes harder to follow when less is asked of us.
God gratification, not self-gratification. All right, let's go ahead and close this week off. And next time we'll see you in Core 10.
Wow, double digits.
All right.
Peace out.